In 1908, a single building in Lower Manhattan was, for a few brief months, the tallest structure on Earth. 60 years later, it was gone, deliberately torn down by its own owner, floor by floor, making it the tallest building any owner had ever voluntarily demolished. Today, an unremarkable steel office block sits on the exact same spot. This is the story of the Singer Building, and why New York destroyed a genuine architectural icon to build something almost nobody remembers. The building that briefly ruled the world. The Singer Building, headquarters of the Singer Sewing Machine Company, was designed by architect Ernest Flagg and completed in 1908 at 149 Broadway. Rising 612 feet, it held the title of the world's tallest building for roughly a year before being surpassed by the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company Tower. Architecturally, it was considered a genuine achievement of the Beaux-Arts style, a broad, ornate base topped by a narrow, elaborately detailed tower with carved stonework and ironwork, specifically designed to announce both the Singer brand and the ambitions of the company behind it. For decades, the Singer Building stood as one of the defining landmarks of the Lower Manhattan skyline, alongside a small cluster of early record-setting skyscrapers that had turned the city into a symbol of architectural ambition. It wasn't just tall. It was, by most contemporary accounts, genuinely beautiful, ornamented in a way that later generations of glass and steel office towers would almost entirely abandon. The company moves on. By the early 1960s, Singer's needs had changed. In 1961, the company sold the building and relocated its headquarters to Rockefeller Center, leaving its namesake tower behind. The building passed to real estate developer William Zeckendorf, who unsuccessfully attempted to convince the New York Stock Exchange to relocate into the space. When that effort failed, the property was acquired in 1964 by United States Steel, along with the neighboring City Investing building on the same block, with a clear intention from the outset: demolish both structures and replace them with a single, much larger modern office tower. This is where the story stops being about one building's fate and starts being about a much bigger shift happening across New York City at the time. Older, ornamented, architecturally distinct buildings, increasingly seen not as assets, but as inefficient use of extremely valuable Manhattan land. The math that doomed it. The core problem wasn't that the Singer Building was old or structurally failing. It was that it was, by 1960s commercial real estate standards, extraordinarily inefficient. The building's design, a wide base topped by a comparatively narrow, non-rentable tower, meant that a huge percentage of its height contributed almost nothing to usable office space. Its ornate architecture, while visually striking, had never been built to maximize square footage, the way modern office towers were increasingly designed to. United States Steel's replacement plan made that math brutally clear. The new building, eventually completed as the U.S. Steel Building and later renamed One Liberty Plaza, was designed with more than double the office space of the Singer Building and the City Investing Building combined, on the exact same footprint. For a company thinking purely in terms of rentable square footage per acre of some of the most expensive land on Earth, the decision wasn't complicated. A record-setting architectural landmark was, in pure commercial terms, an underperforming asset sitting on top of a much more valuable opportunity. The preservation fight that came too late. By the time demolition plans were finalized, New York City had actually established a Landmarks Preservation Commission, created in 1965, specifically in response to growing public anger over the earlier demolition of the original Pennsylvania station, itself widely regarded today as one of the greatest architectural losses in American history. The timing, though, worked against the Singer Building. Despite its historical and architectural significance, it was never granted formal landmark status before demolition proceeded, a protection that would have legally prevented it from being torn down. Preservationists did fight to save at least part of the building, specifically its opulent marble lobby with vaulted ceilings, hoping U.S. Steel could incorporate it into the new construction. That effort failed as well. Demolition began in August 1967 and continued into 1969, dismantling the building floor by floor, using deconstruction rather than implosion, a slower, more deliberate process common for structures in dense urban environments where a controlled collapse risked damaging surrounding buildings. When it was finished, the Singer Building held a genuinely rare distinction, the tallest building any owner had ever voluntarily chosen to tear down. What actually survived? Almost nothing physical remains of the original Singer Building today. The only confirmed surviving piece is a set of ornate chandeliers salvaged from its lobby, which were relocated and installed in a building at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, where they remain on display. Everything else, the carved stonework, the ironwork, the record-setting tower itself, was gone within 2 years. In its place rose One Liberty Plaza, a 54-story steel-framed office tower with a distinctly different design philosophy. Thick structural columns and horizontal steel spandrels, giving it a heavy, industrial appearance, purpose-built for its original anchor tenant, U.S. Steel itself. The building later became home to major financial tenants, including Merrill Lynch, which at one point owned the entire structure outright. By almost every commercial real estate metric, more usable space, more rentable floors, a design built entirely around modern office efficiency, One Liberty Plaza is considered a success. It simply isn't a landmark anyone travels to see. The legacy of a building that no longer exists. The Singer Building's demolition is now widely cited by architectural historians as one of the defining failures of New York's early historic preservation movement. A moment that, alongside the loss of the original Penn Station, helped crystallize public and political support for stronger landmark protections going forward. It held its specific record, tallest voluntarily demolished building, for decades, only being surpassed in 2021, when 270 Park Avenue was torn down to make way for an even taller replacement, and again more recently, by other towers demolished elsewhere in the world. The uncomfortable truth sitting underneath the whole story is that nothing about the Singer Building's destruction was reckless or accidental. It was a calculated, entirely rational business decision, made by a company that looked at one of the most architecturally significant buildings in New York City and correctly concluded, by the only metric that mattered to its owners, that it was worth more dead than alive. Putting it together. So why is the site of one of the most beautiful skyscrapers ever built in New York now home to an unremarkable steel office block instead? Because a truly great building, and a truly profitable one, are sometimes judged by completely different standards, and when a landmark's protection arrives just a few years too late, commercial math wins every single time. The Singer Building didn't fail because it was poorly designed, poorly built, or poorly loved. It failed because it was standing on land that had become worth more empty than occupied, and in 1960s Manhattan, that was the only failure that actually mattered. Subscribe to Faulty Blueprint, because every failure has a design behind it, and sometimes that design is a spreadsheet, not a blueprint.